Good morning. I am Norton II, Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico. Today I'm coming to you from the Bob Carey pedestrian bridge over the Missouri River. It runs from Omaha, Nebraska to Council Bluffs, Iowa. Today I would like to talk to you a little bit about Tulsi Gabbard. Now, she's been in the news a lot lately with some accusations against James Clapper and John Brennan and ultimately Barack Obama. And in the past, Peter Zeihan has had a couple of unpleasant things to say about her, and I expect in the near future he's going to have a lot more unpleasant things to say about her. But first I'd like to talk a little bit about her history. She is, of course, the youngest woman to be elected to the Hawaii House of Representatives. She was elected at the age of 21. She also serves as an officer in the Hawaii National Guard. At the moment she holds the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, where she last held the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. I've not read anything saying that she has relinquished that rank or her position in the National Guard. Obviously, that's a little bit on hold while she's in Washington, D.C. She allegedly has a top secret security clearance, and she has allegedly been involved in some clandestine work around the Horn of Africa. Allegedly. She served as part of Operation Enduring Freedom in Iraq. She was attached to a medical unit, so she saw an awful lot of American soldiers and Marines who were wounded. She's seen a fair number of them die, and that's shaped her worldview. She has a very unpleasant view on pointless interventionary wars. Obviously, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq did not turn out anywhere near as well as we were told by George W. Bush and his administration. Afghanistan is pretty much back right to where it started, and Iraq could be a lot worse off. There was a point in time where it looked like it might end up as an Iranian client state, but fortunately, racism won out over religious solidarity. So the Shia Muslims in Iraq don't really see themselves as being entirely on the same page as those in Iran. At least part of that's because the Shia Muslims in Iraq don't have a particularly high opinion of the current Ayatollah. They don't think he particularly deserves that title. It's a religious title. It's not a government title, which I only recently learned digging into Shia religion, I guess. But at any rate, she has a very deep hatred of Islamists as a result of fighting them. And this carried over into Syria when Bashar al-Assad was fighting a war against Islamists there. Now, the United States government got involved not on Assad's side. We were siding once again with Al-Qaeda and its pieces. Now, after 9/11, you think we would have learned a lesson about siding with Al-Qaeda against someone that we don't like, but obviously not. The CIA is apparently filled with slow learners, so we raiding them, and Tulsi Gabbard really didn't like that, and she went over there to talk with Assad and a number of other people, and that got her labeled a Russian stooge by the people who were funding Al-Qaeda who didn't like it. And Peter Zeihan very much likes those people who funded Al-Qaeda and the CIA and the rest of our intelligence services. He occasionally works for them, and they feed him information for his business. So he's more than happy to parrot propaganda about Tulsi Gabbard being a Russian agent, which I think is absurd for reasons I'm going to get into. After the war, she got involved. After her involvement in the war, she ran for Mazie Hirono's old seat when she ran for the Senate, and Tulsi Gabbard won it. She went to the House of Representatives. And in 2013, she was a rising star. She was invited to be the vice president of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, alongside the president, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and she accepted the position. So fast forward to the 2016 election. Tulsi Gabbard came in with a horse that she was betting on, although to my knowledge she didn't do anything that would unduly influence the election. She was a fan of Bernie Sanders, and as it turns out, the rest of the DNC, for the most part, was in the tank for Hillary Clinton. And they would put their thumbs on the lever for Hillary Clinton. Initially, Debbie Wasserman Schultz only wanted to hold 6 debates, which would minimize the amount of exposure Hillary Clinton had. And Tulsi Gabbard apparently privately voiced her complaints about this at the same time that publicly Martin O'Malley and Bernie Sanders were publicly voicing their complaints about this. They ended up eventually holding 9 debates. They folded a little bit. That's a far cry from, I think, the 16 that the Republicans held in the same time frame. And that did, of course, allow Donald Trump to rise to the top of the pack because he got a whole lot of time to tear down the rest of the Republicans in a public forum and ultimately became the nominee and then the president. That, of course, did not happen on the Democratic side. They put their thumb down for Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders, and because, I'm going to hurt some feelings here, because the Democratic Party is inherently more authoritarian than the RNC, they had a lot of tools that they could use to stop him. Namely, superdelegates, which all lined up behind Hillary Clinton pretty early. So they did that. They put their finger on the scales for her. At one point, I do believe it was Donna Brazile, gave questions in advance to the Clinton campaign so she'd be able to go in and answer them knowing what they were going to be. And eventually details of this came to light in the Guccifer 2.0 hack. Now, to the best of our knowledge, Guccifer 2.0 is an alias that was used for elements of the Russian GRU, so they did hack the Democratic servers. They attempted to do the same with the RNC, but they were less successful, at least partially because John Podesta in the Clinton campaign was using a password that was a derivative of password. And to be perfectly frank, if any of your passwords are a derivative of password, you have no business running a lemonade stand, let alone working on a presidential campaign. If you use password and you get hacked, you 100% deserve everything that happens to you as a result. Don't be stupid. So, that happened, and it was partially why Hillary Clinton ended up winning the nomination. It was at least partly Bernie Sanders' own darn fault, as early in the debates he went out and said he didn't want to hear about Hillary Clinton's emails anymore, and ultimately the primary reason to not want Hillary Clinton to win is because she is deep down an incredibly evil, incredibly corrupt person. And to his credit, Peter Zeihan readily admits that. If you take out all the evil and the corruption, I suppose Hillary Clinton would be a fine presidential candidate. Unfortunately, it's the core of her character, so you can't really get rid of that and have her still be the person that she is. So, that came out. Gabbard resigned from her position in protest, publicly endorsed Bernie Sanders, and that is that part of history. Tulsi Gabbard is a person with a strong sense of right and wrong, who believes very strongly in truth, and who will stand up to power no matter what the consequences are to her professional career. And that will continue in the future, in both 2017 with her trip to Syria and all the way down to the present date. Peter Zeihan doesn't see this, probably because most of the people he works for on the government end are, like Hillary Clinton, evil, corrupt people. I expect that he's saying she's a Russia agent because they've told him to say she's a Russia agent. He gets information from them. Some points in time, I do believe he's accepted business from the United States government in the past, so he knows where his bread is getting buttered. And I don't know if he has any personal qualms with saying that Tulsi is a Russian agent. I do know that at least to some degree that accusation has been stated by Hillary Clinton, who's an evil, corrupt person. At any rate, that's who I see Tulsi Gabbard is. Tulsi Gabbard is a good, righteous person who is angry at injustice. And she hates Islamists and hates nation building. It is fine by me, because Islamists are evil and nation building is by and large stupid. And Donald Trump, of course, during his first 4 years, he got us into no new wars. He hated nation building, and he largely kept to his word, unlike a certain Barack Obama, who promised the exact same things and then did the exact opposite, increasing the number of wars we were involved in from 4 to 7, some of which were mind-bogglingly evil, like Libya. The Libya war, of course, was we engaged in that, toppling Muammar Gaddafi, turning Libya into a failed state, allowing ISIS to run over a third of it, presumably so that Hillary Clinton could show how big her balls were going into the 2016 election. And if you don't believe me on this, I would invite you to read Hard Choices by Hillary Clinton, which says pretty much the exact same thing. And presumably you can trust Hillary Clinton about Hillary Clinton's motivations. Barack Obama's very publicly said this is why he got involved in the war. Hillary Clinton was the deciding voice. He's also publicly said that Libya was the single biggest mistake of his presidency. And I'm not sure I'd say it's the biggest mistake, but it was a very big mistake, and it's a moment of appreciated intellectual honesty from Barack Obama to say, oh, it was a mistake. We'll pass that. I don't want to cause problems with little kids. I try not to swear, but I do work in a factory. I'm used to being around machines blurring it away at 120 decibels with hearing protection, so that talking to a person involves being very close and trying very hard to talk and listen to them. So I just pretty much get to say whatever I want for 12 hours a day, and no one gets to hear me. So it takes a conscious effort sometimes not to swear. Little kids about it should be making that effort. All right, so Tulsi Gabbard is near and dear to my heart because she went through the exact same sort of arc that I did. Now, I went through my arc much quicker. I figured out the way the Democratic Party works in 2016. I'd like to believe that's because I'm quite a bit smarter than Tulsi Gabbard. Of course, I'm also significantly lazier than her, which is why she's the director of national intelligence and I'm a technician at a factory. And again, I rather don't like working with people, so I suppose that's fine by me. But she went through the same arc. She was a Bernie Sanders supporter. She saw the Democratic Party screwing over Bernie Sanders. She wasn't particularly thrilled with some of the things the Democratic Party had done in the past, particularly in regards to foreign wars, although she was also skeptical of the GOP. I saw Donald Trump largely running against the Republican Party, won the nomination, although I didn't vote for him in that primary. I voted for Bernie Sanders. And the exact moment I made the switch from I'm not voting for the Democrat to I'm voting for Donald Trump was actually in the second presidential debates. Hillary Clinton got up from all the cameras, said she was going to institute a no-fly zone in Syria. The only people who were flying any significant number of jets in Syria were the Russians, so she was effectively promising a shooting war with the Russians should she be elected. And I noped right out, voted for Donald Trump, no regrets. I, for the most part, rather enjoyed his first term. Personally, my income almost doubled during the 4 years of his presidency. That was pretty awesome. And then, I liked that. In 2020, I honestly voted for Tulsi Gabbard in the primary. She ran in that primary, and also something that got her in deep trouble with the deep state. She ran. The Democrats didn't have a whole lot of really good options, but at the moment, the one that was rising was a woman named Kamala Harris, who had made out pretty well in the first debate, attacking Joe Biden for being a racist, and Joe Biden didn't do pretty well in the first two primaries. But the second debate comes around over the course of about 8 minutes. Tulsi Gabbard completely destroys Kamala Harris's campaign, calls her out for her record as an attorney general in California, where she threw a whole bunch of people in jail for using pot, and she kept them in jail past the release point for the purpose of using them to fight wildfires. Forcing people to work, paying them little or nothing is, to my understanding, called slavery. So Kamala Harris, the first black woman to the first black woman to be vice president, engaged in slavery. That was not particularly cool. State-sponsored slavery, but slavery nonetheless. So that completely destroyed her campaign. That got a lot of people very angry at her. And so she had her very big, very public falling out with the Democratic Party altogether, became an independent in 2022, became a Republican in 2024. Of course, we found out a lot more about Joe Biden in between 2020 and 2024, which I'll address in some future video. So Tulsi Gabbard's near and dear to my heart because she went through the same arc that I did. And I see a little bit of myself in her, so I'm a little attached. So when Peter Zeihan says she's a Russian agent, I get a little angry. This is why I don't feel bad calling Peter Zeihan a CIA stooge. That's exactly what he is on this issue. He's a CIA stooge repeating stuff that is not true for pats on the back and access, on occasion, government contracts so he can choke to death on a pretzel.